because community and place matters. So often we get pulled into ideological, position-based conversations and debates. We get pulled on either side of a line drawn by somebody that's not us, and pulled away from our understanding of how things really affect real people. But what I believe my art and my gift is to pull us back to the understanding of our daily lives. That means understanding people, understanding community, understanding how things affect real people. And so with that being said, this is the land they forgot. They say that dim shoulders and burdened asphalt comprise the first place that the city forgot. A place where Mama's God and Uncle Lester's Jim Beam make the pain easier to forget. A place where smiles billboard the corner store, laughter fills street corners, and hallelujahs fill the pews beneath stained glass. A place where heroes stand picturesque on cardboard stapled to popsicle sticks and airbrushed on the front of dulling t-shirts. A place that be underfunded, over-patrolled, and bastardized for the black and brown polymer used to weave resilience round here. This is a place that cannot be beaten, bloodied, or bleached less than. It cannot be demonized or stigmatized into disappearing. This place is so beautiful that all it is inspiration and encouragement. It is a place where bellies get full because someone cares enough to understand that a meal is also a lesson. It shows us that there is always more work to do. It is a place full of those who stood to fight for injustice, but also turned around and made sure that they took care of the babies that they saw out way past their curfew. This is a place where there are legends that will never be given their due, but we all know the kind of work they do. We understand that we hold strong in the midst of pain. We celebrate when there is a chance for joy, and we say, hallelujah, God, thank you and amen, because we know how hard it is to keep pushing on. This is a place that is familiar to us. It is in the midst of our heart. It is in the midst of our soul. We carry it in our spirit, and we never forget it. They say it's not where you're from, it's where you at, but you wouldn't be where you at if you did not come from where you were from, and we know this, have always believed this. This is why so many folks find their way back below the Mason-Dixon line. They called home, and they needed to be replenished, to be restored. This place, it will never smell like anything other than grease and freedom. It will never sound like anything other than a joyful noise. It will always taste like the best cooking you ever had. It will always feel like a warm embrace, and we will always know it inside of our hearts.
The White family led us in prayer, actually. So a prayer opened up our meeting and closed our meeting. Also, Yolanda had us fast every Wednesday. For those of you who don't know what fasting is, some people don't know. Some people don't know what fasting is. You set aside, in particular, a meal, and it allows for you to focus and concentrate on the Holy Spirit. And so we actually fast for this event, to be honest with you. And so the White family has been very vocal around what they're seeing around the community. They've been present and active in the community. But more importantly, they are hosting and supporting small black businesses in a city that don't have that many. And so when you walk down this whole shopping center that is owned by the family, they are helping small black businesses get a chance at a rent they're not going to find anywhere else, at a relationships they're not going to find anywhere else. And so to me, they've been here for a long time, and I said we owe them this conversation.
Discover the pinnacle of visual storytelling experiences with BroCo TV Productions. From the artistry of photography to the magic of videography, the world of podcast production, exclusive red carpet services, captivating MC services, inspiring speaking engagements, expert panel discussion curation, and breathtaking drone services. The Bros have you covered. Elevate your events and storytelling with us. Contact BroCo TV Productions now at 919-714-9905 and be a part of our incredible journey at www.brocotvproductions.com. We're here to make any room better.
He is like the Kevin Durant of this dream team. So he can hit a three and do a fadeaway and play defense. And so most people don't have the flexibility to go in and out of theology, in and out of sociology, in and out of secular, in and out of spiritual, with the same level of depth that someone like him have. And so he had a role to pastor in this area. He's had a role to lead the YMCA in this area around conversation of DEI before they used DEI as the term. He's had a chance to actually lead national DEI efforts with the YMCA. And so he can lead at a macro view and hit a three-pointer, or he can come in and do a layup from being from here and around here. So the very first person on the panel that we would like to invite is Reverend James White. Yeah. Thank you. Then we have Dr. Ward. Dr. Everett Ward, when I was alternative principal right down the street. For those of you who don't know, people don't visit alternative schools. They send their kids, but they don't visit. Dr. Ward was president of St. Augustine, and he came to visit our students. And he went to the garden and he told his story in the garden. And very rarely do we have somebody that not only studies Ella Baker, but leads like Ella Baker. At the time, he was both president of a fraternity and president of a university at the same time. Not too many human beings could do one of those. And he did them at the same time. And with that, he still came to a school where kids were kicked out of the system so that he could make them and embrace them to be a part of his system. And so with that, I would like to welcome to the stage Dr. Everett Ward. Thank you. Thank you. Now, a couple of years ago, I became a student of housing. I had to learn what was affordable housing, what was it about, what's the range and the concept of affordable housing. And I ran into Yolanda. And I didn't run into Yolanda by going to her executive suite in some office. Now, mind you, she's leading one of the largest holders of affordable housing in this state. I didn't meet her at some exclusive executive meeting downtown. She was near the garden, right behind this building, welcoming people to eat of the garden that was grown by the community. And she's helping us understand the garden that they're planning today around housing, what would that look like in the future for us to eat from? And so with that, we invite Yolanda on to the panel. Dasan is, I would say he's Allen Iverson if we had to keep going down the NBA. He has a skill that can get you to the championship, but also a flavor that can touch multiple generations. And so he is well-respected, well-known, well-liked by everyone that I talk to. But as you heard in his really beautiful display of poetry, poetry is still a thing that's celebrated in the Black community despite people's perception of the English language and Blackness. But also, he does it in a way that allows you to get a glimpse as to how deep he can go. He teases you, but he can literally go to as deep as you would like in terms of philosophical, sociological, theological frameworks. And so with that, I would like to welcome to the stage Dasan.
So that's a whole nother story that's fascinating in White's Barbershop, and even our names and what have you, which is a whole nother story. But John and Eleanor White, they were born in 1923. My mom graduated from Elizabeth City State Teachers College, AKA at 1940, she graduated. Used to show me the homes that she cleaned in order to go there. My dad was a ship worker, sharecropper. That's how we ended up in Barco, North Carolina. I worked for the YMCA, but I've never really worked for anyone. I've always worked through. And what I mean by work through is because being a black man born in 1961, you understood the Jim Crow reality that you were living in. And so there were mental models that influenced me. One of the books that influenced me in black exploitation period was The Spook Who Sat by the Door. And part of what the whole goal was is you understood the system by being in the system. And so it was one of the first ones from my family to go to a predominantly white college, East Carolina University, but didn't go there because something was wrong with historically black colleges, because my growth, my brother graduated from Delaware State, my mom, but I wanted to understand the system, wanted to be a lawyer.
Discover the pinnacle of visual storytelling experiences with Broco TV Productions. From the artistry of photography to the magic of videography, the world of podcast production, exclusive red carpet services, captivating MC services, inspiring speaking engagements, expert panel discussion curation, and breathtaking drone services. The Bros have you covered. Elevate your events and storytelling with us. Contact Broco TV Productions now at 919-714-9905 and be a part of our incredible journey at www.brocotvproductions.com. We're here to make any room better.
Chose East Carolina because John East was there, who was a protege of Jesse Helms. And if you want to understand white systems and structures, you certainly would go and learn from John East. So that was my mindset, and all the work and works that I've navigated in is that as a black man growing up in 1961, before you had the right to vote, that in any system you're in, you're to be a learner, an expander, and an influencer. The other thing is I live in Cary. I don't live in Southeast Raleigh. And that's because I come from a generation where place is never simply land, but place is understanding of people and purpose. And so even in working for the YMCA, not because I was a YMCA person, but the other thing about being in places, I grew up in a time period, and my father, you tell the truth. And you tell the truth in any place that you're in, and you change from within with a sense of understanding who you are. So I got in the role because I was a consultant to the Y in 1999 when DEI was simply black and white. And they ended up consulting for a number of years. And then around 2003, they felt that they needed, again, someone to be in leadership after all these years. And let me say this too, I need to say this about a barbershop. A barbershop is a place of safety. I have my own history in barbershops. Barbershops is where my education came from. But in my time period in being a barbershop, there was no idea of black classism because I grew up in the 60s where Dr. White was Kermit, where once again Dr. Jones was Bill. So I grew up in a barbershop also was the place where you didn't have the white gaze. So much of what I'm going to say is going to be truthful because I feel like I'm in the barbershop again. The barbershop was also the only place where many black men, it was your first non-sensual touch that you ever had from another man, especially if you grew up in the time period I grew up in. So I remember Mr. Bowman as well, very well. Barbershop was also the place where there was a level of dignity and honor. And when I look here around these walls, because it was a no cussing policy, it was the dignity of honoring women who came in the barbershop. You whispered when they left, but then you definitely didn't talk about it, and you honored them and you gave up your seat. I learned etiquette in the barbershop from black men who talked about things with the freedom of truth, who even disagreed and argued, but they also told secrets. And when you're in a barbershop, you speak and understand that you're going to be given secrets. So even in our time today, I hope that we have some secrets as we talk about these conversations. So I've always understood that my work with the Y wasn't for me, but it was to take an institution that wasn't designed for me, an institution that still had a white power construct that was all throughout the triangle, that had a misunderstanding. And so I've always worked within the Y, not trying to build a name for myself, but building a system and structures for others. And Southeast Raleigh was very much a part of that narrative that was important. And so part of my whole goal was to be the unknown, but yet still making a difference and changing things. And I'm doing that now. I work in Minneapolis now. In Minneapolis, I lead what's called the Center for Social Impact. During George Floyd, they had a center of Equity Innovation Center that really took the exhibit that you saw in the North Carolina Museum of Science. And that YMCA got $5 million to start a center where they use the exhibit to deal with issues of diversity, equity, inclusion. So I now fly there often. I lead a team of about 6 people around diversity, equity, inclusion consulting. But then I lead other vice presidents for the Center for Social Impact of 22 different initiatives that deal with social impact throughout the city of Minneapolis. They deal everything from human trafficking to teens, to youth and family services, to what we do with New American Welcome Centers. And I do all of that because of John and Eleanor White, and Mr. Bowman and Mr. Hill, my barbers, who gave me a sense of dream that you can accomplish whatever you need to accomplish.
Let me, first of all, again, I'm Everett Ward, and I am truly honored to be here today. But to Yolanda and to the White family, it's coming home. One of the things that I am honored to sit here beyond measure. I am a proud, very proud product of Raleigh. For it'll be 66 years, November the 6th. I was born 1958 on the campus of St. Augustine's University at St. Agnes Hospital. I literally bleed Raleigh. Both of my parents are Raleigh, both of them like your parents. My mother was in the first graduating class from Ligon High School. My father graduated from Washington High School, then came to St. Augustine's. And so our families have been in Raleigh for generations. So I am a son that is extremely protective of what I call old Raleigh.
Discover the pinnacle of visual storytelling experiences with BroCo TV Productions. From the artistry of photography to the magic of videography, the world of podcast production, exclusive red carpet services, captivating MC services, inspiring speaking engagements, expert panel discussion curation, and breathtaking drone services. The Bros have you covered. Elevate your events and storytelling with us. Contact BroCo TV Productions now at 919-714-9905 and be a part of our incredible journey at www.brocotvproductions.com. We're here to make any room better.
Because as a product of some institutions, I have dedicated my life to preserving those golden nuggets that Professor so eloquently gave us a literary review of the richness of our community. And so I am honored to be here, and I say that the barbershop for me, the first time I went to the barbershop was on Hargett Street, when we had barbershops on what was called Black Wall Street at that time. But it has always been what I call the black man's country club. It was where we could be who we are, affirmed, celebrated, and there were no barriers of separation. You were welcomed here. Believe it or not, I firmly am committed to, now that I have retired, I worked for some 38 years and then decided that I would retire. But my last position was as president of St. Augustine's University. Now, to be a graduate and to be a generational product of St. Augustine's, I tell people God gives you blessings that you couldn't even have imagined as a child. If anyone had ever told me that a skinny kid that grew up in Biltmore Hills, which was designed by and was on land that was owned by Calvin Leitner, that then John Winters, who was the black developer, developed, and it was at one time called an exclusive colored neighborhood. But you grow up on a street named after Don Newcomb, on the corner of Danridge Drive, named after Dorothy Danridge. Every street in Biltmore Hills is named after an African American. So growing up, I was born into an era that celebrated my blackness. And so when I went outside of Southeast Raleigh, and if we were challenged on our dignity, I thought it was something wrong with them. Because I grew up in a community where your doctor was a graduate of Meharry College and Clark, Atlanta, who gave birth to me at St. Augustine, named Dr. Robert McDowell. So you had these examples of leadership. So we were taught early that leadership and service was an expectation of you. Just like Sister White said, we didn't grow up thinking that we had any other option in life but to serve this community. And if you did not serve, and if you didn't give back, you were looked upon not favorably in the community. That was the Raleigh that we knew. So when Professor was talking about describing the church and how people would say amen, but when Unc was drinking that Jim Beam, you loved Uncle, you loved grandmother at Davie Street Presbyterian Church, and everybody worked together to make the community better. And so I am even more committed now to doing everything I can to preserve those institutions. I served on the Raleigh Historical Properties Commission. And so we did that because Ralph Campbell was on the city council at that time, and they were tearing down our neighborhoods. And we had an oral history where we worked with Tim Tyson, who's now noted historian, graduate of Duke University, and we went through and got oral histories about Smoky Hollow, 4th Ward, where my grandfather came back from World War I and built his home on Harrington Street that no longer exists anymore. Or you talk about College Park, where people lived that either taught at St. Augustine's or worked on the campus. So the stories can go on and on and on, and I could talk all day about the rich legacy of this wonderful city, but my biggest concern now is in the name of prosperity. If we don't preserve these institutions, here we are at a place 100 years old, and your ancestral home is just down the street. This is a wonderful, wonderful place, but we got to preserve this and all other institutions and develop some more. Now I close with this. I tell people all the time, when I was at St. Augustine's, people would come to me with all kinds of ideas, and I'd say, look, Raleigh has become the tale of two cities. Prosperity and development on one side, and on another side, neglect. That's why we got to have the right elected officials. And we got to speak truth to power.
Discover the pinnacle of visual storytelling experiences with BroCo TV Productions. From the artistry of photography to the magic of videography, the world of podcast production, exclusive red carpet services, captivating MC services, inspiring speaking engagements, expert panel discussion curation, and breathtaking drone services. The Bros have you covered. Elevate your events and storytelling with us. Contact BroCo TV Productions now at 919-714-9905 and be a part of our incredible journey at www.brocotvproductions.com. We're here to make any room better.
You can put sidewalks and roundabouts on Hillsborough Street, and I'm a proud graduate of North Carolina State as well. But I can't get lights, and my students couldn't get adequate food services, and we lived in a food desert. There's some real discussions we need to have. That's the only reason I'm here.
Good morning. My name is Yolanda Winstead. My professional role, I am president and CEO of DHIC, but I have a personal connection to Southeast Raleigh as well. I grew up in the country also, east of here in Wilson County, but I had an aunt and uncle who moved here to Raleigh and bought a home after the Vietnam War. So I spent my time between Wilson and Raleigh as a kid growing up right over in Long Acres, and remember, walking from over off of Parnell Drive over to Boyer Drive to go to church on Sundays, any Sunday that I was in Raleigh, visiting my aunt because we were going to go to church, no matter what. And my cousins and I, ran around the neighborhood up, and I remember when the KFC was at the peak there at New Bern and Poole Road. And so for me, Southeast Raleigh has always been home, and Southeast Raleigh has always been, as a child, the concept of Raleigh for me was Southeast Raleigh, because we came to Raleigh, and the neighborhoods of Southeast Raleigh were where we moved about and played and interacted with other people. And so growing up, I knew I always wanted to live in Raleigh because, again, Raleigh felt like home. So I had the opportunity to come to Raleigh and work after college, and I had the opportunity to come to work for this nonprofit that was originally formed back in the mid-'70s called Downtown Housing Improvement Corporation. And that organization was birthed out of the period following urban renewal, which cut through the African-American communities and cut off what were previously connected communities. And so that organization was formed, this was really formed in response to trying to address the housing needs that were left behind in those neglected neighborhoods of Southeast Raleigh as disinvestment began to take root. And so we were one of a number of community development organizations across the country doing that work here in Raleigh in and around downtown. As our service area grew, the name of the organization, which was a mouthful, we just started using the acronym DHIC. But why that's important today is that we were developing opportunities for folks to become homeowners, doing homeowner rehab, helping folks preserve their home and maintain home ownership, helping people access financing to get into single-family ownership, and also developing multifamily developments right here in Southeast Raleigh, when none of those other developers that are now all rushing here to try to get cheap land and build really tall buildings and bring and respond to all the folks that are coming to the community now. DHIC was involved in providing affordable quality housing for families that were already here. And to this day, we still maintain and own and operate every multifamily development in Southeast Raleigh that we were responsible for getting built. So currently, our organization has just over 800 units of multifamily apartments in this community, and much of it surrounds Washington Terrace Shopping Center, and we consider ourselves a neighbor and try to be very good neighbors as part of the community rooted here, and trying to be a part of the solution to make sure we're able to stem the tide of displacement in our community, and to also prove the theory when we talk about place that this has never been a neglected community. It's always been home, and it's always felt like home. And once you come here and you see that and you're a part of that, you can't think anything different than Southeast Raleigh is a place that is home, that is connected, and that deserves the attention that it should have, so that the folks who want to be here and the folks that have been here can remain here. And so I'm really honored to have been invited to participate today, because I'm amongst folks who have much more expertise than I do and much deeper roots to the community than I do. But for me, this is home. So thank you for having me.
This is good for me because, I either walked or rode my bike all through here. Like I said, I got my hair cut here. I grew up in Grace AME, right down the street. My grandmother, my nanny, was an usher there. So, I got dragged there every Sunday. And so this community matters, but one of the things that I came to understand as an adult was that Raleigh, understanding Raleigh meant understanding South Raleigh. We had the benefit of being able to live in Worthdale because of what North Raleigh became to folks. And that idea of folks seeking some sense of opportunity created space for Black families to be able to have a little something, to have a front yard, to have a backyard, and then to also be able to make this side of town as rich and as dynamic as it was and has always been. But I've also had the opportunity to watch that shift and change.
Discover the pinnacle of visual storytelling experiences with BroCo TV Productions. From the artistry of photography to the magic of videography, the world of podcast production, exclusive red carpet services, captivating MC services, inspiring speaking engagements, expert panel discussion curation, and breathtaking drone services. The Bros have you covered. Elevate your events and storytelling with us. Contact BroCo TV Productions now at 919-714-9905 and be a part of our incredible journey at www.brocotvproductions.com. We're here to make any room better.
You know, I had no idea I was going to be an artist. I originally went to college to be an industrial engineer. I struggled initially just with that adjustment to college. Came home, started to work. St. Aug was a saving grace because it allowed me to reset. There was lots of things that I thought were going to be what my life was focused on. Basketball, all kinds of things. But what ultimately happened, I was given art, culture, and community. And the way that impacted my life totally transformed my direction. I'm someone who early in 2000 was involved in organizing around racially involved activity at NC State's campus around a student named Naja Baptist, which was my introduction to social justice organizing. But in that, I found elders, Black Workers for Justice, these folks in the community who looked at young folks and took us under their wing and said, hey, let's use this energy for something. So my journey, I stepped into an open mic at the same time, and I found folks who were carrying on rich, long-standing traditions of Blackness in the arts, cultural traditions, and I found mentors there. It is that community that encouraged me, helped me found. There was a brother named Herman Laverne Jones who had a theater company here in Raleigh who gave me my first job when I decided I was going back to college, and I needed flexible work in order to pay rent, but I needed to be able to have a flexible schedule to take classes. These kinds of things were the things that kind of pulled me through. I've probably worked with, there's no telling how many community organizations across Raleigh that I've worked with because I was educated in an understanding of what that means. I bring all that up because that wasn't necessarily the culture of my peers at that time. I just happened to fall in a particular place where I had access to elders who understood what that was, but I'm sort of in the middle of a diminishing kind of understanding across our community, where I understand that my presence in community matters, but a lot of my peers do not feel the same way. And so what we're seeing a crop of young folks who do not have the same mentorship and do not walk with the same legacy, right? So part of my work, I've been involved in social justice work, community organizing, and I use art and culture as opposed to using it as a means for my own benefit, where I was encouraged to leave here a long time ago to go off to a major city because I was so talented. And I said, I'm not leaving my home, right? I will show that I can have impact with this gift here. And so what that has led me to do is seek folks who can help me understand arts administration, consulting, how to work with organizations around issues. I have worked around health issues. I have worked around anti-violence issues. I have worked around these things using art and culture as a means for engaging folks, because this is the place that gave me a sense of what my life is worth. And it is through community, right? It was not my credentials. Matter of fact, I was offered an opportunity to come over to St. Aug to teach as an artist in residence when they didn't have an artist in residency program. Matter of fact, I was the only artist in residency in the academy working full-time at an academic institution. But they created that space and did encourage me to get my master's degree, right? Because I would not otherwise have been working in the academy without it. But St. Aug gave me that opportunity and then shaped me for me to still be working in the academy. And that came from someone who knew me from working in the community, who pitched my idea to the campus, and the campus said, yes, our students need someone like him. This is the way this works. And so for me here today, it is to echo everything that's been said, but also to remind y'all that y'all are the key to it all working, because y'all are the reason why I exist. And we will be the reason that's the next set of leaders and influencers, and the persons who will make change the way that we know it needs to happen will continue to believe that it's possible.
He is always advocating for community. So Mark, if you can raise your hand, Mark, so that they can know. Mark T is on the Raleigh Transit Authority. The decision was already made in 2015 to have a bus rapid transit come down New Bern. The highest ridership are black and brown people. So the case to be made for mass transportation should be around black and brown people. The problem with the BRT, bus rapid transit, is that it's going to come down, it's going to be a dedicated lane coming down New Bern. We need good public transportation, but we don't need it at the cost of housing, at the cost of displacement, and at the cost of lost stories. So we know that the BRT is going to be useful for this community, but it will be dangerous to this community if we don't put the right protections. So they're supposed to break ground this year. That's going to create a different Southeast Raleigh. And the people probably can't name the policy, but they can feel the tension.
Discover the pinnacle of visual storytelling experiences with BroCo TV Productions. From the artistry of photography to the magic of videography, the world of podcast production, exclusive red carpet services, captivating MC services, inspiring speaking engagements, expert panel discussion curation, and breathtaking drone services. The Bros have you covered. Elevate your events and storytelling with us. Contact BroCo TV Productions now at 919-714-9905 and be a part of our incredible journey at www.brocotvproductions.com. We're here to make any room better.
So there was 2 meetings this year where the community had attention, and it was a packed room around this BRT coming. So our conversation rests on that big policy that will definitely change how Southeast Raleigh look. The second thing, because property prices will go up or have already gone up because of that plan. The second thing is the survival of St. Aug. That's another thing that's created some level of anxiety. What will the future of Southeast Raleigh look like? St. Aug, Shaw. So this is, they might not name it, but this is the tension that's in the air. And so we want to rest the conversation on this. And so Dr. Ward, we know Southeast Raleigh is more than just a neighborhood. You've already shared a few of that. It's a place of rich history, culture, resilience. But can you give us some stories of why, when somebody's looking at St. Aug and they still see the hospital hasn't had a new brick in centuries, why this place is still community, why this place is still powerful and rich and worth living in right now, not in some distant future. Can you give us some stories that will allow for us to understand why people will be so proud about this place, even though some other individuals don't see the value in this place?
Lobbyist for the North Carolina Department of Transportation and then headed federal program there. The first thing that must happen is an organized, strategically designed advocacy program from within the community. You have to be organized and you have to be vocal in your position. And it must be a collective position. It can't be position A, position B, position C. There's got to be a collective agenda. I would suggest that collective agenda must start with a thesis of preserving the history and the legacy of Southeast Raleigh and being strong advocates of preserving those institutions that are anchors to that history. So, for example, Shaw University and St. Augustine's have always been those intellectual meccas that served as the bookends for the black community. St. Augustine's and Shaw University. We've got to make certain that we preserve both of those institutions. It cannot be one or the other. As I told someone, when North Carolina State and UNC merges, we might give some consideration. Both St. Augustine's and Shaw University have rich histories of powerful educational institutions. But if you don't advocate for your own, how can you expect other people to advocate for it? So I tell people I am a proud graduate of St. Augustine's University. And when I die, I'm going to be buried at Mount Hope Cemetery that was founded in 1872 before you all could be buried at Oakwood. Organization, advocacy, and a collective advocacy strategy to preserve the resources. The second is your elected officials can only be as strong as you push them to be. If we have elected officials sitting at the table and they are silent, you have no voice at the table. So you got to make certain that whatever your agenda is, New Bern corridor, New Bern Avenue corridor, whoever, state senator, state representative, county commissioner, city council member, ministers, community organizations, RWCA, NAACP, we all have got to be on one accord, preserving the rich legacy, and that we want housing to be maintained and preserved. When my great uncle built a house on Lane Street, 1203 East Lane Street, across the street from Dr. Lemuel Delaney, who was a surgeon at St. Agnes Hospital.
Discover the pinnacle of visual storytelling experiences with BroCo TV Productions. From the artistry of photography to the magic of videography, the world of podcast production, exclusive red carpet services, captivating MC services, inspiring speaking engagements, expert panel discussion curation, and breathtaking drone services. The Bros have you covered. Elevate your events and storytelling with us. Contact BroCo TV Productions now at 919-714-9905 and be a part of our incredible journey at www.brocotvproductions.com. We're here to make any room better.
It was once declared a historical property, but it is no longer there, torn down. But there are other homes there. Where are our community organizations? Where are your homeowners associations? Where are your neighborhood associations? Where are your business leaders united in voice? We're going to preserve Washington Terrace. Because I know the White family can tell you they have been fighting off developers trying to get this land for years. But this proud family has said, no, we are going to keep our legacy, and her grandchildren will benefit, and their children will benefit from this legacy. So we've got to decide about preserving our own legacy. Professor of mine once, who was a professor at St. Augustine's, once told us, seize the moment to define your own reality. Seize the moment to define your own reality. So I would strongly suggest advocacy, a united voice, and forcing the people who say they represent us to represent our interests at all times. Now, then when you have these committees, you know what it is, they put these committees together, so you got this advisory committee on the New Bern Avenue corridor. Don't let other folk pick who your leaders are. You can't sit on the committee and say you representing us when you aren't connected to what us wants. You hear what I'm saying? So when they came to me when I was president and said, oh, we want you to serve on this bond program. You remember and this developer was going to be on the committee, and you're president of St. Augustine's, and it would be so, Dr. Ward, to have you on this committee. See, before you had a PhD, I was Everett. And I'm not selling my people out because I love my home for nobody. So guess what I told him? Show me where the bond is going to benefit my people. That's one question. The only question you got. Everybody asks the same question. How does it benefit the black community? Well, they couldn't answer the question. So guess what I said? I will not serve. Because if you can't be truthful to your own, who can you be truthful to?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And when I walk down Fayetteville Street or Davie Street or Person Street or Oakwood Avenue, I don't want my own people looking at me cockeyed and saying, he sold us out. So when I leave and walk around there, I feel real good. I feel real good. I have no problems looking at my folks saying, guess what? I didn't sell nobody out. And I'm not selling my school for nobody. If they look like me or not, if your mission is to buy it, it ain't for sale. That's more of what you wanted, isn't it?
Yeah, so let me ask a question. How many people know who Frank Lucas is? Frank Lucas is probably one of the first Hollywood systemic drug dealers that we knew about. And Frank Lucas had an incredible system of drugs. But you say, why are you talking about Frank Lucas and drug dealing right now in a conversation like that? Because Frank Lucas's driver was Melvin Combs. Melvin Combs, who was murdered at 33, left a 2-year-old son behind. And Melvin Combs was a drug dealer. Melvin Combs, Frank Lucas's driver, and Frank Lucas was the driver of Bumpy Johnson. And Bumpy Johnson also was an organized gangster. You say, man, you're taking this conversation down. This is the barbershop. But here's why history is important, because Melvin Combs at 33 left a 2-year-old son, Sean Combs. And when you ask yourself the question of how in the world could Sean Combs move to where he is right now, you should have compassion if you only knew the history. If you only knew the history, you might look at this situation differently before you say, how could you? So if you don't know the true history, you will never have a proper analysis of the present. But part of that true history, and this is my mistake, my generation, we sort of purported the magical Negro syndrome. The magical Negro system is that we just get one person. Are you going to be the next Dr. Martin Luther King? That was the narrative. Or thinking that, because you now are this, or you got your degree, or you now a celebrity. I mean, again, in the barbershop, when I looked at Jet Magazine and Ebony at that time, it was always who was the richest, whose house we lived in. But the problem with that is real history, nothing happens by one person. It always happens by way of a system. And part of what we have misunderstood, even with our landmarks, we have landmarks of people rather than systems that really have caused things to take place. Dr. King was Dr. King not because of who he was as a great orator, but it's because of the systemic genius that he had of those around him. And you saw that because you have Andrew, who ends up becoming once again, the mayor of Atlanta, Julian Bond, a senator, and the list goes on and on and on. So Dr. King's greatness was the people around him. Here's why this is good today that there's a panel, because there isn't one person that represents leadership.
That's right.
Real leadership happens by way of a system. It's the mistake that we made in Raleigh of even with Clarence Leitner. See, I told you this is the barbershop, and some of y'all said, I know you're not going to mess with Brother Clarence. No, Clarence Leitner, the name of Leitner Achievers was very important. But you got to ask yourself the question, why was he only mayor for 2 years? Because real leadership always has a system and someone to follow, and there hasn't been a mayor after him. A model would be Maynard Jackson. Maynard Jackson even produced one of the sons of Raleigh, ended up being the mayor of Atlanta. But Maynard Jackson said black mayors, black mayors, black mayors after him. But you gotta ask the question, the secret, why was there only one black mayor?
Discover the pinnacle of visual storytelling experiences with BroCo TV Productions. From the artistry of photography to the magic of videography, the world of podcast production, exclusive red carpet services, captivating MC services, inspiring speaking engagements, expert panel discussion curation, and breathtaking drone services. The Bros have you covered. Elevate your events and storytelling with us. Contact BroCo TV Productions now at 919-714-9905 and be a part of our incredible journey at www.brocotvproductions.com. We're here to make any room better.
Then there's another secret. Well, who really was responsible for him getting elected? I don't have an answer for you, but when you dig into the secrets, you now begin to know what are the monuments that become really important and why they should stand. We maybe don't even know the real story of Shaw and St. Augustine's College. The real story of Shaw and St. Augustine's College, yes, it is academic excellent, but there was some organizing and frameworks that both of those institutions built for the state and for historically black institutions for the country that most people don't know. Most people only celebrate January 1960 and the Greenboro sit-in, but they don't realize that Shaw and St. Augustine's College came together in February and did a sit-in at Cameron Village. And so even when we think of what monuments and landmarks we need to preserve, all too often we may need to do a deeper dive and understand the real dynamics of why things look the way they look. We got to ask, how is it that St. Agnes was not built? And here's the thing. We can't be so naive as to just blame white people. And this is even where we've got to be even truthful about our system of slavery here in Raleigh. Most people don't even know there was a real large free slave non-slave community here in Raleigh. Here in Raleigh, there were free black people in Raleigh. But most history tells the narrative as if all of us were slaves. And so even when we talk about Oberlin, many of us don't know the real history of how the name came to the name that it needed to be. And so some of us may be building monuments to heroes that really are not the heroes that should be celebrated. So I think we got to do a whole new analysis of really understand our history, because you're in a generation now that sees the fault lines of you not dealing with the system and only naming certain heroes. That's why, no offense, but Terrance getting elected mayor is really not going to do justice to what really needs to happen in Raleigh. Because you better look at the city council and some of the other systems that are in place and make sure that those systems are held accountable. But just having a black mayor, the second black mayor, that really doesn't mean anything. We know that from having the first black president. Because if you don't understand the systemic realities that in our teens and our youth, they need to understand systems. Dasan knows the danger of talking about hip-hop without understanding the system of hip-hop. And it has done incredible damage. So when you talk about landmarks, Terrance, I think we got to really maybe reassess, what do we really want to celebrate for the next generation to come? And that becomes incredibly important because the next generation is not going to care as much about place as we do. So we're going to have to educate and help people understand to care about place as well. How can you care about a place and institution when your life exists right here? And when your business navigation and how you're going to connect with people, that's why some of us may walk in here and say, man, we ain't got that many people. No, this is exciting because content is far more important many times now than just having a crowd. That may not have answered your question, but I just think it's important when we have that landmark conversation.
That they sell in order to be able to continue the lives where they live without understanding what losing the asset here means to the community. And I've heard that story. I've heard the story from my elders who are like slowly watching the families they've grown up as they have passed and saying that the great-grandchildren and grandchildren are not coming back to move back into the homes, that the homes are being sold and now their neighborhood is changing around them. But I say that to say that there's a conversation that I don't remember anyone having with me. And so it makes me wonder if the conversation has been had ever since, which is, I have watched literally every property that both sides of my family own in Raleigh all gone. Either it has been sold or taken away for not paying attention to taxes, and it comes from a lack of conversation across the family. We have not preserved any house that I grew up in, right? And so me, my cousins, nobody still has those families. So me fighting for South Raleigh is fighting for the fact that this feels like home, but I can't tell you where home is because someone else lives there, right? And so I'm not the only one, right? But I was a full-grown adult before anyone had this conversation, right, with me. And so when we start to think about, we're in a moment where this idea of prosperity has been, you know, just across our faith, everything, without understanding what that really means, right? We also are having this conversation about generational wealth without actually having a conversation about what we're saying. So now it becomes a buzz term. That you have folks talking about this idea of wanting to establish generational wealth without actually understanding what it is. And it is not money, right? It is not money. This property is an example of what that means, but that's not the way the conversation. Even now that real estate is a big deal, we're not having a conversation about impact and generational impact. We're not having a conversation about what that means to political power. We're not having a conversation about, we don't have these conversations. I didn't grow up having them, right? So now, when we think about what's happening here, I bring that up to say that there's a lot of energy that could be activated in order to be able to make the kind of change and organize, but you have folks who haven't been educated on what that looks like. So they're watching their city and their home change without having an idea of what to do. Or if they are moving, they aren't moving in the way that best benefits the change that we're looking for because it's not organized.
Discover the pinnacle of visual storytelling experiences with BroCo TV Productions. From the artistry of photography to the magic of videography, the world of podcast production, exclusive red carpet services, captivating MC services, inspiring speaking engagements, expert panel discussion curation, and breathtaking drone services. The Bros have you covered. Elevate your events and storytelling with us. Contact BroCo TV Productions now at 919-714-9905 and be a part of our incredible journey at www.brocotvproductions.com. We're here to make any room better.
Right? So there's a part of this that is about raising awareness, which goes back to the point about the way that I use culture and think about community engagement, is that culture is a way of being able to activate and bring people to pay attention. One of my biggest issues was over the last 8 years has been how everyone argues whenever there is a demonstration. And of course you hear the folks, why are folks gathering to demonstrate again? It never changes anything. We do not listen to organizers. We romanticize organizers and leaders and we never talk about them. So when we talk about landmarks and heroes, we lift up charismatic leadership, but we never bother to understand all of the work that it took to be able to put that person in position. And we never listen to them when they tell us stories. So the reason why that's important is that we don't understand how things move. We don't listen to organizers. If we don't listen to organizers, then we don't really understand how mass movement is built and how change is actually actualized. So this is a thing where we got to bring, a demonstration is just a place for organizers to have access to a mass group of people. The real change comes from everyone that they were able to use that energy and direct to offer them a place to be able to say, you're here because you're mad and upset and frustrated. Come meet us next week and we'll teach you what to do. And so whatever happens after that never gets attributed to the demonstration. It gets attributed to the organization who made the most of the demonstration. And then we blame the demonstration when people show up again. But we're communal people, so we need the whole space. From Hush Harbors to now, we are communal. We're going to gather when we feel a certain way. That's the other reason why art and culture is powerful, because I know what it means to gather my people. I can gather them anywhere. A church, a street corner, a cafeteria, auditorium, a bar. And I can say whatever I need to say to them and they will listen, clap at the end and thank me for saying it. There's only so many ways that that's actually going to happen. And this is the thing that I was taught, is that it happens without political or ideological position. Everybody reserves their thought and their opinion about where they stand until it's over, right? It's why I offer this to young people, because it's one of the only ways that they will ever have uninterrupted opportunity to say what's on their mind. That happens in art. Bring a speaker to the stage and let them start to talk about an issue, and half the crowd starts to think about what their rebuttal is by the time they get 5 minutes in. Bring an artist on stage to say the exact same thing. Everyone will listen clearly until it's over and then decide and turn to each other and talk about how they feel about it. You don't get that power otherwise. It's why everything that we've done as a people has also been celebrated in art and culture, and then we've looked to it to remind us how to move forward. Here's the thing that I work towards, is that it now has to be an integrated part of anything that you're doing. It needs to be an integrated strategy, because we can't afford in this era of content to lose young brilliance hoping that they'll create something that we can use and direct towards the movement. What they need to do is they need to be a part of it, and we need to create capacity and sustainability so that what they create is influenced by us, so that we know that what comes out of that can be used by us. Because where they're going to find sustainability and success is not going to push them to create the things that are going to help us to use their art and culture in order to motivate the folks that we want to show up to fight for change. So these things are all integrated, and it starts with education awareness, but it's also a matter of mentorship. I used to ask my students every freshman, do you have mentors? The folks who had mentors usually had mentors because they were pulled into a community program or they played sports. Outside of that, they had no idea of what mentorship is. They didn't know how to find them, and they didn't know how to have the conversation. And if you leave a university having matriculated, having people invest and pour into you, but you've never had the conversation about mentorship, then you leave out into a world where you're chasing a model of success without having anyone to help you understand the context of it. You can easily be swayed. The other side knows exactly how to paint a beautiful picture, but it has no merit and it has no soul. So I say to everyone that my place in terms of culture, in terms of this moment and this displacement, is that this displacement has affected a lot more people than we see, but they don't have a way to show up. And so it starts with organization, but it also starts with being able to understand we've got to send a wide message so that they know it's time to come back home. And the best tool that we have for that is art and culture, because it will reach way further than we will, and that sends the call that we need you to back home. Come back home now, because there's a fight that needs to happen here, and we need all hands on deck. So this is how this works together, and it's important, right? It's important. There's a richness and a brilliance here, but there's also a beautiful, creative, and imaginative richness here as well, right? Just from that campus, the amount of artists across art and culture and entertainment that have come from that campus, never mind Shaw, that there's just, and came from here, this side of town. So that's when we talk about this, I think those are the things. There's a call, there's a battle cry that needs to happen. There's a battle cry that needs to happen. Otherwise, the folks affected are going to look smaller than who it actually is, because we're talking about folks still here. But if we raise that battle cry, you're going to look up and you're going to see that that there's a whole lot more of us. We just don't have a place to still be at. But this is still home. And that changes the way this all looks.
Well, I will say that the one thing that I find as we go out and talk to people, and when we're like doing a ribbon cutting of the property or something, is people don't understand the trajectory and the length of time that it takes to do things when it comes to real estate development and building in the community. And so when you start talking about the policies at the city or the state or county level, you have to, what we don't always understand collectively is how long the trajectory is. So for example, the city of Raleigh is about to start planning for its next comprehensive plan. Well, the current one that's wrapping up was started in 2009 and runs through 2030. So now you're going to start to see e-blast and things on the city's website, and they're going to start talking about planning for the next comprehensive plan. But the things that we're seeing happen now came out of that comprehensive plan that started back in 2009. So we've got to be in the rooms and be at the table and be giving input and advocating as the next plans are started. And there's there's plans for everything. There's a comprehensive plan, there's a development ordinance plan, there's the plan for the BRT, there's small area plans. So there's plans on plans on plans, but what's missing is our voice and what we want to see the vision for our community be in those plans, because we're not at those tables or we're not engaged. And I had a board member that used to always say, the system works the way it was designed to work.
Discover the pinnacle of visual storytelling experiences with BroCo TV Productions. From the artistry of photography to the magic of videography, the world of podcast production, exclusive red carpet services, captivating MC services, inspiring speaking engagements, expert panel discussion curation, and breathtaking drone services. The Bros have you covered. Elevate your events and storytelling with us. Contact BroCo TV Productions now at 919-714-9905 and be a part of our incredible journey at www.brocotvproductions.com. We're here to make any room better.
And that's to concentrate power, and everything's set up and arranged in a way that's convenient for those that system wants to be accessible for. So how do we break that pattern? I mean, before you get into like specific policies, we just got to break the pattern in the system such that we can be involved. You know, average working person that's, working second shift can't go to a city council meeting, right? So how do they have input in those plans? And when is there space created for folks that may not work a 9 to 5 or may not have a job that allows them to take off to go be civically minded and be a part of the community and have their voice heard? So we've got to start thinking about how we can impact the system. Well, first we got to be a part of the system so we can change it. And just being outside the system, just like when we hear people talking about, well, my vote doesn't count. Well, if you don't vote, then you can impact the system. So we got to start thinking about how do we break into these systems so that we can redesign them in a way that we're able to be effective and have them respond to our community and our needs. And I'm not sure, I've probably gotten way off from real estate there, but I really see, even in my work, and I work at DHIC, there's a really small box that we work within because of the system that's been set up to allow us to participate and pursue the resources that are available to our communities to even build affordable housing. And it's so complicated and so time consuming and so complex that there's only a small group of people that can really do it effectively. And so we bang our heads on the wall in my professional life every day about how do we change the system so that we can have more impact and help more people and get more units on the ground. But we're coming from a place where you hear this huge deficit of affordable units that we have just in Wake County is over 60,000 units. There's no way we can ever catch up on that operating within the system as it currently exists. And so it sounds really daunting because it is. We're trying to replace something that's diminishing faster than we could possibly do. And we're on this hamster wheel trying to figure out how we can preserve housing in our community at the same time that we know we can't possibly build it fast enough to meet the need and the demand. And so it can be disheartening, but we really do have to collectively come together in a way that we can advocate for ourselves, educate ourselves, advocate, and then also redesign the system. But we have to be in that system to do it.
You know, one of the things that's been real clear from this segment is the takeaways that I've heard is you got to organize. Through that organization, you got to understand the system. Then you got to advocate. And as a part of that advocation, you have got to understand how to impact the political process as well. Organization, understanding the system, and advocacy. Because that is the best way you can impact the system. So if we don't even know or we're not educated on when the comprehensive plan is being done and having people in the room who are part of the organization that will speak to what we have said our priorities are, that's how you got to take it step by step by step. So to your point, the conversation we were having earlier, Ella Baker was strong because she understood the system. And it was Dr. King who benefited from her work that she had done
That's good.
at the grassroots level in the 1930s and the 1940s. And Dr. King benefited in the 50s and the 60s from understanding the process. And everyone organized and understood their roles. Everybody had a defined role. And to the arts, James Brown was saying, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud." It rallied everybody. That was that clarion call that you were talking about. So we got to have everybody in the room. And then we also got to understand, and you may not invite me next time, but Angela said to us, just cause they look like us.
Yeah.
That one right there.
Don't mean that they are of us.
Right there.
So everybody can't be invited. When you talk about real strategic, impactful impact into a community, watch who you have in the room, and I'll leave it with that.
And so this is the last question for everyone. Before we start there, I was listening to Yolanda on a panel, and she said, by the time you apply for funding for an affordable housing, by the time the zoning is done, by the time you get all the ducks in a row to actually produce a product that you can touch, it's years. It's not just a couple of months, it's years. And she said, when people move into their units, which is mostly rental, they do have ownership, but mostly rental. They live and die mostly in that rental. So the moment they enter that room, they live and die a high percentage in that. And again, there's some people that appetite is for rental. But ownership, for most people, is not even on the table. To be able to say, I need to go visit my home that I once lived in. It's not even on the table. So when Yolanda can go just on a journey, just on that alone, what does it mean to actually say, let's go visit this person's land, this person's home? It's becoming more and more difficult in this city. And matter of fact, that's probably the number one issue, is the ability to say that this is my land, this is my home. So I didn't want to lead there. So whenever we're finished, if you want to take a deep dive into housing, Yolanda is the person. But the last question I have, now I need you to just unleash all the Nas that's in you, all the J. Cole. How should we reimagine South Raleigh 10 years from now? Mm-hmm. And how do we reimagine it with a strength base? Mm-hmm. A way in which we are successful in everything we've said up here. Mm-hmm. What does that 10-year look like? And that's the same question for everybody coming on down.
Well, that's the question. And if you asked me, that would be the heart of a campaign, because it does a couple of things. One, it allows room for empowerment and agency. Because if you ask folks that question, then what you have is a vision that you can order steps towards. One of the things that's important about understanding, social movements have been like the driver of change in modern history. It was political movement, it's social movements, and it's people rallying together around shared experiences and shared understandings, shared frustrations. But part of that, when you look at the research around the rhetoric of social movements, is about being able to identify a source, and then also be able to point people's eyes towards what it would look like if you win. Because popular music language that I always use is when we win, not if we win, but when we win, what will it look like, right?
Discover the pinnacle of visual storytelling experiences with BroCo TV Productions. From the artistry of photography to the magic of videography, the world of podcast production, exclusive red carpet services, captivating MC services, inspiring speaking engagements, expert panel discussion curation, and breathtaking drone services. The Bros have you covered. Elevate your events and storytelling with us. Contact BroCo TV Productions now at 919-714-9905 and be a part of our incredible journey at www.brocotvproductions.com. We're here to make any room better.
And so when you can do that, then what happens is that all of the conversation and all of the rhetoric, all of everything gets towards that end, right? And it allows for you, no matter what's in front of you, to remember why it's important to keep pushing, because we are moving towards an end. The other thing is also so that there is, that this doesn't become a by and by, it becomes a thing that you can touch and realize in your lifetime or at someone's lifetime, because we all have been talking about what it looks like. So there is an understanding of when we get there, we know that we are here, and we can begin to set our sights on the next thing. All right, so that question is extremely important, because of how important it is for us to be pushed forward towards it. Everybody's a professional, and we sit in rooms all the time talking about a vision and mission statement, value propositions. This is what we're talking about, right? Our vision is what we will look like if we achieve our mission, and our mission orders our steps towards that end. The value proposition is the benefit that it will have for whoever we serve. It is the same thing. Problem is we don't listen to workers either. And as well, we don't listen to organizers. And so these things that are inherent in our daily lives, we don't apply across the board. So when you ask the question, what you are actually, to me, what that is as an organizer, is the basis for a campaign, because it's a question that we keep asking. Now, I feel like it's important for me to say that as opposed to answer the question, because what I have beside me are some folks who are going to be able to offer some insight, right? That I'm here to hear, because that's also a part of it, right? When you ask the question, what you create the opportunity for is an intergenerational space where we can start to look at what this looks like to folks who have been able to experience this over a length of time. And see, we love to talk about young folks, but the one thing that I know as an educator is that when the conversation is held the right way, they will listen. So if they're not listening, then it's not them, it's the conversation.
That's good.
So I think this is the opportunity to be able to recognize that, because this is something they be invested in, because they do have a 10-year view. But you put that 10-year view beside a body of wisdom who has existed on this earth for the last 60, 70 years, then it pushes them to rethink what their 10-year vision is when they hear it compared to someone else's. And you can start to have a conversation about that. So the question itself, because I walk into rooms with institutions and organizations and tell them that the answer isn't what's most important, it's the questions. You ask the right questions, you get the best solutions. We've been moved away and been microwaved into not being process-oriented. The process is what's important. Each person here is able to articulate what they're able to articulate because of the walk that they have chosen, the choices they've made, and the work that they've done. That is a process. If you folks fixate on the answer, but right, and we don't think about why they're able to answer that question that way, then you're missing most of what you need to know. So that's why I say my thing here is I'm going to pass the insight over and let them answer the question. But what I'm going to say to y'all is that the question is so extremely important.
I can imagine if we're successful with the things we shared today, that all the, for lack of a better word, amenities, accoutrements that we see in other communities are here, juxtaposed to housing, and they're all integrated together.
That's good.
And therefore, we can live in Southeast, continue to live and root ourselves in Southeast Raleigh in the community and have all our needs met within a pretty short radius. And we would not have to leave our community for the things that we want or need, because it's here and it's accessible to us here. And those of us in the room can stay here, but can stay here because we want to stay here and have everything we need here. And so instead of having to feel like I've got to go to North Raleigh to go shop at, Midtown, which used to be North Hills, I could do those things in this community.
That's right.
And to me, I think that's that would be a vision of success in 10 years.
I think we arrive at our desired goal 10 years from now by doing a couple of things. First is what we've heard here today does no good if we don't organize.
That's good.
If we don't organize and we aren't intentional about impacting, as Reverend White said, systems. and using our collective strength to impact the political process. It will never change, and we've got to be intentional. Another component I'd put to that, and that's what I'm dedicating the next, I'm trying to live to be like Dr. Robinson. I want to live to be 104, so the next 40 years I'm dedicating to this. You've got to build and create your own institutions for the development of leadership. One of the things Reverend White did, he brought up my mentor, Clarence Everett Lightner. And you also brought up Maynard Jackson. But one of the things that most people omit from their conversation, Maynard Jackson became the successful mayor of Atlanta because he was prepared for leadership by his grandfather, Mr. Dobbs, who had been head of the NAACP, and there was a political foundation in Atlanta that gave Maynard the independence to be elected, but then when he was elected, he didn't forget what his mission was.
Discover the pinnacle of visual storytelling experiences with BroCo TV Productions. From the artistry of photography to the magic of videography, the world of podcast production, exclusive red carpet services, captivating MC services, inspiring speaking engagements, expert panel discussion curation, and breathtaking drone services. The Bros have you covered. Elevate your events and storytelling with us. Contact BroCo TV Productions now at 919-714-9905 and be a part of our incredible journey at www.brocotvproductions.com. We're here to make any room better.
And his mission was economic development in Atlanta. So now when you fly into Atlanta, you fly into the Jackson Airport. And economic development was happening and black wealth was built in Atlanta because Maynard, that's why you can't leave one without the other. Now with Clarence Lightner, one term was that strategy of black elected official harassment and the issues that were there. If he had a second term, there could have been some economic development to impact the system, as Reverend White so eloquently. But if we are not training the next generation, it doesn't do us any good to sit here today in 2024 and in 2044 saying the same thing, and we don't have a new generation of trained leaders that are replacing us. Now my neighbor here, Sister Towns, tell you about our neighborhood. Her father was a brick contractor. My father owned a concrete business. No one did business in our community unless they went through the network of black-owned businesses. But that's an intentional decision that we have to make. We can't build other businesses. So when they're talking about developing the city of Raleigh, what used to be North Hills, now it's Midtown, how many black businesses are benefiting from that? Why isn't Wegmans coming over here in a food desert?
That's good.
But you can put a Publix on P Street. But I'm still talking about some chicken on New Bern Avenue. I'll leave at that.
You know, it's interesting. I think to answer your question, it's really how this began. First of all, thank you so much. But you gave us a demonstration, even in your comments, of what 10 years from now. 10 years from now, you cannot separate your theology, anthropology, sociology, psychology, or geography.
That's good.
And you've had all of those things communicated today from all of us. And part of, and I apologize for those who may have been wounded by an out-of-date, misinformed church framework, because many of us have been misinformed. But we're here because there were some slaves of 200 years of slavery who knew they wouldn't see their deliverance, but they saw our deliverance. And they were able to do that because they had an active theological framework of praying and understanding that that would make a difference. What you're in the midst of is answer to prayers. And in such a way that it goes beyond, you can't put it in a theological box, because notice you heard everything from juice to wellness to even shared power and shared leadership. That's because you bring all those things together. The other thing I would say, and man, I've been learning so much. And I always keep a notebook with me wherever I go when I know there's going to be knowledge of anyone dropped into space. But don't turn organizing into a myth or into something you got to go and do, because all of you are organizing right now. The question is, what are you organizing? As Dasan said that, the truth is, what are you organizing? Your habits, your social life, where you go, where you spend your money, you are organizing even now. It's not wait, and now I've got to organize. I got to look back and go, how am I organizing my family? When you go to your place of worship, whether you're going to the mosque or to a church, okay, what are they organizing around? What are they doing as they bring people together? Where is this moving? But all of you, your habits, your recreation, we are organizers. I am here because, and most of the organizers, you will not know their names. That's the danger of social media. Because social media makes you think that because you got a high Instagram count, Facebook, or you getting likes, that somehow you've made a difference. No, real organizing are the people who have no names. And they often are not people you will even tell their story, except for those who honor and understand where they came from. Ella Baker, you wouldn't have liked her if you met her. No. She would not have, listen, and you wouldn't have wanted to take pictures of her home as well. That's right. Most of the real organizers are people who are concerned about those that people would see and not for themselves. And my question is, not only do you have secrets, but can you work in secrets? Are you able to do and be concerned about somebody else's power? In the next Southeast Raleigh, 10 years from now, we'll have a number of leaders in organizing that you may not even know their names, but you will experience the sociology, anthropology, psychology, and reality of the community. That's what real organizing does. I have never met Sister Yolanda, but I've experienced her work in her life. And she is leading in a way that all of us are dependent on. That's true of real leaders. Be careful of those leaders who are always taking pictures but never moving purpose.
Discover the pinnacle of visual storytelling experiences with Broco TV Productions. From the artistry of photography to the magic of videography, the world of podcast production, exclusive red carpet services, captivating MC services, inspiring speaking engagements, expert panel discussion curation, and breathtaking drone services. The Bros have you covered. Elevate your events and storytelling with us. Contact Broco TV Productions now at 919-714-9905 and be a part of our incredible journey at www.brocotvproductions.com. We're here to make any room better.
That's right.
Be careful of those leaders.
That's right.
The real music didn't always get the contract. The greatest spoken word people didn't always get the contract. Dasan and I haven't even had many conversations together, but 10 years ago, I saw Dasan in a Barnes & Noble leading a group of poets in Cary. Guess what? The Barnes & Noble is gone. But the work of Dasan is still here. And that's got to be true for all of us. So I say to all of us is, much of what you've heard today, the question is, okay, what are you doing with your historical legacy? What are you doing with the place that you do have? And what are you doing with the next generation so that this is a whole new world. And Terrance, thank you for being an organizer. Thank you that you're, as far as I'm concerned, we need to get out and vote for Terrance, but Terrance is already positioning himself as a winner. And again, I learned from the organizer, not from Norway, but the organizer from Nazareth, who were able to take 12 no-name people who you and I wouldn't even have at our dinner table and organize for something for an eternity. And Dr. Ward is not retiring because he's not living on the same timeline that we live on. I live, hopefully, if you have a faith perspective, you live on an eternal timeline, knowing that the greatest trees that we will see, that we plant, we won't eat of the fruit, but the next generation will. Because that's what we stand on in our legacy as well today. So 10 years from now will be something I would have never put in my imagination in many ways, but it'll be beyond what any of us would have ever imagined.
Well, can you please give him a hand, please? We originally had time for QA, but I let them freestyle, so I didn't want I didn't want to stop it. So I do encourage you to ask questions. We will have follow-up meetings around housing, safety, transportation, and jobs. So we will have committees around that, and I love what Yolanda said. They're calling for requests for the comp plan, but we don't do a good job telling you that we're calling for requests for the comp plan. And so I'm glad that we have Yolanda, who are often in those rooms, often shedding light on the people that are left out of the conversation.
I want to acknowledge your wife and your son. Thank you all so much for even thinking of having this grand occasion here at our family barbershop. My parents have owned White's Barbershop since 1967, but my father's family has been on this street almost 100 years, like I said. And my mother's family grew up on this street. My parents met each other on this street. And so there's a lot of legacy on this street. But I thank you all for considering having it here. And to everyone here, God bless you. We're so grateful that you've come today. And I hope that something has been said that encourages you to carry on and to pass it on to the next generation, because it's about the next generation. It's not about us. And so again, thank you, Terrance, and God bless you as you and your family move forward in this great challenge, and know that we're here to support you all, and we're just excited. So Terrance mentioned that every time we get together, we begin in prayer. We acknowledge God in the beginning, and we acknowledge God in the end, because we believe that that's how you do things. You bookend everything with God. It's all about Him anyway. And so I would like for us to close out in prayer, and then we'll turn it back over to you. Will you bow with me and pray with me, please? Heavenly Father, first of all, thank you for this beautiful day that you blessed us with. Thank you for this gathering here of your people. We thank you for the community. We thank you for our nation. We thank you for life, health, and strength. And then, God, we thank you for your Son, Jesus. We thank you for your word, and we thank you for your Holy Spirit who guides us. Now, God, as we end this beautiful session that we've had today, and thank you for everyone here, everyone under the sound of our voices, God, we want you to be glorified in everything we do. This is not about us. It's all about you. And so, God, we're thankful that everything that has been said and done today has brought you glory. And so bless us as we go our separate ways until we meet again. Continue to keep your hand of protection on us and your hedge of protection around us. And may we always be listening to your Spirit who guides us from life into eternity. We give your name the praise, glory, and honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you and thank you.